Pittsburgh today, President Biden will unveil his American Jobs Plan, which will create millions of good-paying jobs, rebuild our country's infrastructure, and position the United States to outcompete China. This is a once-in-a-century capital investment in America to transform our current and future infrastructure and fundamentally change life for Americans. We will tie these investments to creating good quality jobs that pay prevailing wages in safe and healthy places. Jobs that ensure workers have a free and fair choice to organize, join a union, and bargain collectively. And we are not going to leave behind communities of color and rural communities that have been systematically excluded for generations. Our investment will also allow us to take on the climate crisis and transition to a clean energy economy. The plan has 4 parts, all of which will affect our everyday lives. The first is how we move, investments in our roads, bridges, rail, and other elements of our transportation infrastructure. The second is how we live at home, investments in broadband, water, power, housing, and buildings. The third is how we care for one another, investment in home and community-based care for older family members and people with disabilities. The fourth is how we make investments in manufacturing, next generation research and development, high quality workforce development, and critical supply chains. To pay for this historic investment in our nation's infrastructure, the president is proposing to fundamentally reform the corporate tax code so that it incentivizes job creation and investment here in the United States, stops unfair and wasteful profit shifting to tax havens, and ensuring that large corporations are paying their fair share. The president is proud of the plan he has laid out and looks forward to a conversation over the coming weeks about what we can do to invest in our infrastructure, boost our competitiveness, and make our tax code easier. And one more announcement for you today. Tomorrow, the president will convene his first full cabinet meeting just a day after rolling out his American Jobs Plan, which will be a key topic of discussion. The president will lift up his deeply qualified, historically diverse cabinet as key decision makers and voices for his administration's agenda and key priorities. The focus of the meeting will be working together to continue implementing and communicating about the American Rescue Plan and how it continues to deliver for working families, discussing the role cabinet members will play in advocating for the American Job Plan, and ensuring we accelerate our federal COVID-19 response and that Americans don't let their guards down. The cabinet will be gathered in person in the East Room to follow social distancing and other COVID protocols. All right, go ahead, John.
Thank you so much. On the infrastructure proposal, so on the American Rescue Plan, the president had his non-negotiables, right? Like the $1,400 stimulus check, that had to be in there. What has to be in there in this infrastructure and tax program for this president? What is he going to insist, and even as negotiations begin with the Hill, must be included?
So, Jonathan, this infrastructure bill infrastructure, as we know, has been a bipartisan issue, right? It comes to Democrats and Republicans. We even saw, morning consult poll showing how it was a poll that they did on a hypothetical $3 trillion plan had a margin of 2 to 1 with registered voters. I mean, this is a piece of legislation or plan that is popular in a hypothetical sense. But we've also seen Republicans who have been for this. We've seen in polling 80% of Republicans who have supported this infrastructure type of plan. So we are going to continue moving forward. This is a once in a generation, right, type of opportunity that we have here. This is about creating jobs. This is about creating millions of jobs for Americans. We talk about the American Rescue Plan. It was a plan to meet the moment, right? We were in an emergency. Now we're at a different moment. And so he has said this. We're going back to Pittsburgh, right, where he was. He's going back to Pittsburgh where he was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he launched his campaign, and he talked about how he was running to rebuild rebuild the middle class. And so this is it, right? When we're talking about rebuilding the middle class, this is the American Jobs Plan, to rebuild the middle class, to invest, to do this historic investment into this country, and also just create jobs to the American people and creating jobs.
Is he prepared to go push this through Congress without Republican votes?
Well, right now, as you know, the president was a senator for 36 years. He knows how to reach to the other side and make big things happen. He did that as vice president as well. So this is something that he wants to have bipartisan support. He's willing to have those conversations with Republicans and clearly with his Democratic colleagues, and really try to work this through, because this is so critical and important for the American people. And so, but here's the thing: this is about the American people, right? This is who he's going to put first in all of this. And we're talking about roads. We're talking about highways. We're talking about investment in this country that we haven't seen since the 1960s. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about children being able to not drink water that has lead in it. We're talking about caregiving for families who really need to be able to take care of ailing parents who they can't get caregivers for. I mean, this is what we're talking about, to help families in this time.
Excuse me, does he have a time frame on when he would like to get this passed?
Well, as you know, as I mentioned, American Rescue Plan was to meet that moment, that crucial moment, and along, with the help of Congress, he was able to do that. We passed that. We're seeing already the effects in a big way of how that $1 trillion plan is affecting American families as far as getting shots in arms, COVID response, and people getting that $1,400 check. With this one, it's gonna take some time, and we're willing to go with the process and have those conversations on the Hill, which we're already having. We've already been having those conversations with Republicans and Democrats, and so we're just gonna see how this goes. But he is zeroed in, laser focused on this plan. That's what you'll hear him talk more about this later today.
What's the message to Democrats who right now, some progressives who are saying this doesn't go far enough? And are you concerned about keeping Democrats together on this?
Like I said, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity that we're seeing here to invest in our country, invest in America, to invest in the American families, the American people, to create millions of jobs, to actually fix our roads, to actually, have a commitment to manufacturing, all of the things that he has been talking about for the last 2 years. And so this is what we're talking about. And so look, he put this plan forward, and now we're going to have that conversation, right, with Democrats and Republicans. And if they have something to propose, we'll have those conversations with them as well.
Do you have an estimate of how many millions of jobs this plan will create?
I don't have that number with me right now, but
the administration didn't roll out a big number like that at the beginning. I believe that they did during the campaign with the Big Build Back Better program.
It's a good question. I think this is part one, right, of the plan. As we've mentioned, there's going to be a second plan coming up in the next couple of weeks that the president will talk about. And so this is the beginning of the process. We'll have that for you.
Leader McConnell said that he spoke with the president yesterday. Could you provide some more information about what they discussed? And did the president have any other conversations with Republican senators?
We don't preview conversation that's had, especially with folks on the Hill.
And is he planning to have Republican leadership over to the White House to try to discuss this?
As you know, the last couple of weeks he had meetings with both Republicans and Democrats on infrastructure. And so there was outreach that was had. There's outreach that's done by staff, as we know. And so we're just going to continue kind of that cadence and making sure that we're reaching out and having those conversations, because this is a critical bill for the president.
I wanted to ask one question on the immigration front. Reporters did just get into one of these detention facilities, and the conditions were pretty bleak. It's at, I believe, 1,700% capacity. Is there a plan to alleviate this overcrowding, and by what point should conditions down there be better?
Yeah, as we have said repeatedly, a Border Patrol facility is no place for a child. And we have been working around the clock in coordination with HHS to quickly move unaccompanied children out of these crowded Border Patrol stations and into the care of HHS so they can be placed with family members or other sponsors. We've even put the OOR staff and HHS staff embedded into into CBP to make this happen, to expedite that process. We deployed FEMA to help HHS quickly build additional capacity to shelter unaccompanied children. We also developed and deployed a plan for HHS to more quickly place unaccompanied children and families members. We are seeing progress, but it's going to take time. And so, but let me be clear, we are putting out the message, the border is not open, people should not make the dangerous journey, and we will continue to expel individuals and families.
Hey, Karine, is on the Derek Chauvin trial, is the president watching it up there like we're watching it back here? Does he plan to reach out to Floyd's family? Has he had any conversations with them since they were at the DNC?
So, I don't have anything to read out on if he's going to reach out to him, but the president has spoken in personal terms about the death of George Floyd. As you know, it affected him in a way that it affected so many Americans last year, and he redoubled his commitment to advancing racial justice. Everything that he has done as president. When you look at the American Jobs Plan, when you look at the American Rescue Plan, has had equity at the center of it. And when he signed the executive order back on January 6th on racial equity, he said those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. It stirred the conscience of tens of millions of Americans, and in my view, it marked a turning point in this country's attitude toward racial justice. So he's watching, just like millions of Americans are, and we're keeping an eye on it.
You had said you're going to do part 2 coming soon, that this is part 1. Why do it in parts, and should people look at that as these are the most critical priorities right now, and this is what the president wants to get done, and you're less confident about part 2?
There are multiple pillars in this, and one is not more important than the other. This plan, the American Jobs Plan, is critical, as I've mentioned before, and it's important. It's an investment, as I've said, into the country and American workers and American families. So there's no one is more equal or better than the other. And just like I said, in a couple of weeks, he will talk about the second part of this plan.
When Jake Sullivan meets with the Japanese and South Koreans on Friday in Annapolis, is he going to brief them on the president's policy review toward North Korea?
So this was released by NSC last night. So let me just inform everyone what's happening on Friday. So this Friday, April 2nd, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will welcome his counterparts from Japan and from the Republic of Korea for a trilateral dialogue at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. This trilateral meeting, which follows the visits of Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to Japan and the Republic of Korea, provides an opportunity for our nations to consult on a wide range of regional issues and foreign policy priorities, including maintaining peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and addressing the COVID-19 pandemic and combating climate change. This meeting with Japan and the Republic of Korea is the first national Secretary Advisor level multilateral dialogue of the Biden administration, reflecting the importance we place on broadening and deepening our cooperation on key issues and advancing our shared prosperity across a free and open Indo-Pacific.
So is the review done on North Korea? Is it completed?
Let me see if I have anything for you on that. So we are in the final stages of our intensive multi-stakeholder North Korea policy review. This has been a thorough interagency review of U.S. policy towards North Korea, including evaluation of all available options to address the increasing threat posed by North Korea to its neighbors and the broader international community. This process has integrated a diverse set of voices from throughout the government and incorporated inputs from think tanks, and outside experts. We have consulted with many former government officials involved in North Korea policy, including several from the previous administration. So we look forward to discussing our review with the National Security Advisors of South Korea and Japan at our trilateral dialogue in Annapolis on Friday. So there you go.
So the president's plan includes taxes over 15 years to pay for spending over 8 years. Would he be open to, not paying for some of this to be, deficit spending? And is that something that he's open to, if that's what Democrats in particular want to do, as we're already hearing from some progressives?
Well, he believes this should be paid for, which is why he included this in his plan. Oh, all right. All right.
Grab hold of something.
Okay, he believes this should be paid for.
Oh my gosh.
Here we are.
Oh.
All right.
Well, that went fast.